Okay, I can confirm that our live stream and recording are both working, and it is 4 p.m., and I believe we have all of our participants here with us. Just before we begin, I will open the meeting with our land acknowledgement statement. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. The territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this is a gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of the Indigenous peoples. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You may now proceed with your opening remarks.
Yeah, I'd like to welcome everyone and start the introduction. Excuse me. Yeah, this is an electronic meeting of the Committee of Adjustments for the Town of Pelham. Everyone present and viewing at home will be given an opportunity to comment on the applications being heard. And please address your comments and questions through the chair. This public meeting has been called to satisfy requirements of the Planning Act and Council bylaws. Notice of this meeting has been given by prepaid first-class mail to all persons listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 60 meters, 200 feet of the subject properties. In addition, a public notice sign has been posted on the lands and information has been provided on the Town Committees of Adjustment webpage. And you can also read on the signs. Agencies commenting on applications may request that certain conditions be imposed should an application be approved. Voicing objections to these conditions will not adversely affect the committee's decision. Excuse me. The process. The purpose of the application and relative correspondence will be heard, following which the applicant will be given an opportunity to address the application. Any person concerned with the application will then be given an opportunity to participate in the meeting. If you have pre-registered to speak during the public portion of the application, you will be brought into the Zoom meeting and will be unmuted. Please state your name and mailing address for the record. Please be advised that once you've finished speaking, you will be removed from the Zoom meeting. If you are live streaming at home and wish to submit a comment during application, you can do so by emailing clerks@pelham.ca. We will be checking that at the end of the public portion. At conclusion of the public portion of the meeting, these comments will be read into the record. If you submit comments after the public portion has been closed, your comments will not be considered. So it's important you get it in early. At the conclusion of the discussion, the committee will render a decision and advise of any applicable conditions. Specific wordings for conditions will be determined by the committee following the public portion of these hearings. Copies of the decisions will be made to the applicant or agent and to any other person who files a written request. If you wish to provide a copy of if you wish to be provided a copy of the decision, please contact the Secretary Treasurer in writing as soon as possible. The Secretary Treasurer's contact information is available in the upcoming PowerPoint presentation and available on the town's website. Any person, corporation, or public body has a right to appeal either the decision itself or the conditions of consent to the local appeal body within 20 days of the decision. That's for the minor variance, and within 20 days of the mailing of the decision for consent applications. The meeting is being conducted by Zoom webinar and is also live streamed on the town's YouTube channel. You may wish to put your view on gallery view by clicking the top right corner from speaker view. We ask that you are mindful of background noise for the duration of the meeting. Committee members are asked to mute their microphones until you're asked to speak. Please raise your hand if you would like to speak and vote by raising your hand. Now, I'll be watching for that. Please note that the attendees who have registered will remain in the waiting room via telephone or electronically until the applicant of interest is brought to the committee. Those participating online via Zoom will be asked by the chair to raise their virtual hand when they wish to speak. On a computer, you can do so by clicking on participants in the bottom center of the screen and then clicking raise hand. On a mobile device, you can tap raise hand in the bottom left-hand corner. You will then be called to speak and your microphone will be unmuted by staff. If you are participating by phone, you will be unmuted by staff when the agenda item that you have registered for is being discussed. Applicants, agents, and attendees are advised that they are free to leave the webinar once the decision has been made on their application. Now, I'd like to introduce the panel, the members here today. I am the chair, John Clausen. Then we have member Sandra Marsh, if you'd raise your hand, and member Brenda Stand, if you'd raise your hand. Thank you. And of course, we have Sarah Leach there. She's handling the meeting, and then we have a few people in the background. Now, does any member of the panel have any pecuniary interest in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act in any of the applications to be considered at this hearing? I have none. Sandra, none.
I have none.
Brenda?
I have none.
Okay. Now, Sarah, has there been any requests for withdrawal or adjournments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there have not. Okay,
then we can go as called. So I gather the first one we'll start with is file A35/2021P, 260 Welland Road.
Yes, that is our first application this afternoon. I would please ask Ms. Miller to please bring in the agent and or applicants and share our screen with the PowerPoint. Committee of Adjustment hearing Tuesday, October 5th at 4 p.m. All Town of Pelham in-person Committee of Adjustment hearings have been canceled. Instead, the town is holding all Committee of Adjustment hearings electronically via Zoom. Please note that no decisions have been made prior to this public meeting. This presentation is based upon the Town of Pelham's Planning Department report and analysis. All comments received from commenting agencies and the public have been forwarded in full to the Committee of Adjustment members for their consideration. Participants are reminded, please ensure your background is free from offensive or vulgar material. If inappropriate material is visible, you will be removed from the meeting. Oh, I will just ask Ms. Miller to, thank you. Next slide, please. Back one. Thank you. Vulgar or offensive language will not be tolerated. If inappropriate language is used, you will be removed from the meeting. Participants will remain in the waiting room until they are called to speak. Once your comments have been heard by the committee, your microphone will be muted. Once voting on the item has taken place, participants will be removed from the meeting completely. You may resume viewing the meeting via live stream. Decorum. The Committee of Adjustment is a formal public hearing requiring decorum. This means that all comments are to be made through the chair. If you have pre-registered to speak, you'll be given an opportunity to address the committee at the public portion of the meeting. If you are live streaming and wish to submit comments live, please use the email address clerks@pelham.ca. Please note that comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting, otherwise they will not be considered. Disrespectful comments will also not be tolerated. Please note that if decorum is lost, the meeting may be recessed and persons will be asked to leave. Public portion of the meeting. To allow for an efficient meeting, each member of the public will be given an opportunity to speak to the committee during the public portion. Please note, after all members of the public have been given this opportunity to speak, the applicant or agent will have the opportunity to address the public comments and concerns at one time. Our first application this afternoon is A35, 260 Welland Road. The subject land is located on the south side of Welland Road, situated between Effingham Street and Staines Street, known locally as 260 Welland Road. The minor variance application requests relief from Section 7.7A, maximum accessory lot coverage, seeking 1.4% where 1% is required, and Section 7.7D, maximum building height, seeking 7.3 meters, whereas 3.7 meters is required. To date, the following comments have been received. Niagara Region. Regional staff have no objection, subject to the satisfaction of any local requirements and requested regional conditions. This will be shown on the final slide. The Building Department. A permit is required for the proposed accessory structure. Public Works Department. No comments or concerns. NPCA. The NPCA has no objection to the proposed variance, but will require a work permit. See condition. No public comments were received from the public at this time of writing. Is the variance minor in nature? With regard to the building lot coverage to 1.4%, staff is of the opinion that although the lot coverage allowed will be exceeded, the impact on the subject property and adjacent properties is minimal. The variance is minor overall, as all the buildings have an overall footprint of 338.8 meters squared, which equates to an overall lot coverage of 3.2%. Adequate land area will remain available to handle stormwater runoff, maintain privacy, the existing septic system, and preserve amenity area. With regard to the variance to increase the building height to 7.3 meters, staff is of the opinion that although the building height allowed will be exceeded, the impact on the subject property and adjacent properties is minimal given the rural context. No negative impacts are anticipated as adequate distance separates the nearest residential building from the proposed accessory. As well, the accessory building is also situated on the rear yard, which can help screen the building from public view and minimize the visual impact caused by additional height. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? The increase of lot coverage is desirable as the accessory building mainly reuses the existing footprint on the property, and the design employs our typical rural built form and exterior finishes which help to demonstrate and maintain the rural character of the property. The increase of height is desirable as it allows for enhanced storage and use of the facility. The proposed accessory building is set back significantly from the roadway and from nearby buildings, which also minimizes its impact on landscape and surrounding area. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? The proposed use of the building accessory to a single detached house is permitted in the good general agriculture designation of the OP, and uses which are compatible with agriculture are permitted. The requested increase in height and lot coverage will not compromise the objectives of the OP, particularly with respect to land use compatibility, stormwater runoff, and private sewage system servicing capabilities. The subject application should have no impact on the agricultural viability of the subject land or the agricultural use of the surrounding land, and is therefore able to maintain the intent and purpose of the OP. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? The requested variance of the accessory building height to 7.3 meters and increased lot coverage to 1.4% is appropriate given the rural context. Reasonable amounts of open space remain available on-site for amenity area, stormwater runoff, and sewage system purposes. Thus, the increased height and lot coverage will not adversely impact the rural character of the area or the surrounding natural heritage features, subject to the results from the requested conditions. Planning staff are of the opinion that subject to conditions, the proposed accessory building should not negatively impact the adjacent key natural heritage features, surrounding neighborhood with regard to land use incompatibility, traffic, privacy, and stormwater runoff. In planning staff's opinion, the application is consistent with the PPS and conforms to provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommend that application number A35/2021P be approved subject to the following conditions. That the applicant conduct and submit a Stage 1 archaeological assessment prepared by a licensed archaeologist to the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture for review and approval with a copy provided to the Niagara Region. This report must also be accepted by the Ministry to the satisfaction of the Niagara Region prior to the clearance of this condition. If required, subsequent Stage 2, 3, or 4 archaeological assessment must also be submitted to and accepted by the Ministry to the satisfaction of the Niagara Region. No demolition, grading, or other soil disturbances shall take place on the subject property prior to the issuance of a ministry letter confirming that all archaeological resource concerns have been mitigated and meet licensing and resource conservation requirements. That the applicant apply for and receive a work permit from the NPCA prior to the building permit. The complete work permit application shall include an erosion and sediment control plan, along with the establishment of an enhanced naturalized buffer between the proposed work to the edge of the PSW. That the applicant apply for and receive a building permit for the proposed accessory building prior to construction, and that the applicant ensure no plumbing or living spaces be provided within the accessory structure at the time of the building permit. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the Secretary and Secretary-Treasurer in writing as soon as possible. Holly Wilford, Secretary-Treasurer to the Committee of Adjustment, 20 Pelham Town Square, P.O. Box 400, Fonthill, Ontario, LOS 1EO, hwilford@pelham.ca. This contact information has also been provided on the Town of Pelham's website. Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, I do see our agent, Mr. Joel Ripstra, and our applicant, Mr. Morrison, is in the meeting with us. Mr. Ripstra and Mr. Morrison, would you like to turn on your cameras and or unmute yourselves?
I'm unmuted. I'm not sure how to.
Oh, perfect. That's okay. Maybe Ms. Miller can send you an invitation. However,
I'm also unmuted, but I don't know how to put the camera on either.
Okay, that's no problem.
There we go.
Perfect. Mr. Chair, would you like to proceed? Oh, I believe you are muted as well, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I forgot that. Yeah. Okay, then I just have a quick question here. The proposed building, is that going to be built around the existing barn?
No.
No. Planning to remove the existing barn or tear it down.
So, and the building department didn't ask you to get a demolition permit?
They didn't ask us to yet, no. The property was zoned as agricultural, so as far as I know, I don't think one is needed. I did speak with Belinda briefly on that, and it seemed to be the same, but we hadn't applied for a demolition permit yet, no.
Well, I just ask if I don't see it as part of the conditions, so.
No, I don't believe we need one.
Okay, Sarah or Brenda, have you had any questions? Go ahead, Sandra.
Hi, John. I guess I'm just a little confused. I thought that just from the application, maybe I misunderstood, but they were going to be reusing the existing footprint. Is that not the existing footprint of the barn? Or is that going to be increased, or is that going to be moved?
The barn is going to be moved, sold, or dismantled, and we're using the existing footprint. There's a concrete pad already underneath it and in front of it.
Okay, so the existing footprint is not going to be increased. It's just going to stay on that existing footprint then. Is that correct?
No, it will be increased.
It will be increased. Okay. Yeah. I think that's where the confusion was, because I was reading part of it was on the existing, and I thought that afterwards I read it was going to be larger. So thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Well,
yeah, go ahead, Brenda. Yeah, unmute you. Yes, thank you.
I got it. Can I just ask a question of
sure.
what is the height of the existing barn? Do you know what that is?
I believe we submitted that. It's equal or less than what we're proposing now.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have no further questions. If Sandra and have you another question, Sandra? Go ahead.
Nope. I was just prepared to make a motion.
Okay. Well, first of all, we have to close the public portion and see if there are any emails. And I'll ask Sarah, are there any, before we close the public portion of the meeting, are there any emails
yes,
or anybody?
Through
Go
you,
ahead.
Mr. Chair, we do not have any pre-registered members of the public. And I did confirm that we also do not have any email submissions, and therefore it is now 4:19, and you may close the public portion of this meeting.
So we will close the public portion of the meeting. Unless you have any more items to add, either Mr. Rupstra or Mr. Morrison. Are
No.
the committee members prepared to vote on the issue? Then we'll proceed then. Then we first see. Excuse me, Sarah. We can't. Do we vote first? Yeah, then put the condition. Yeah, we'll vote.
Yes, I'd be looking for a motion to move forward.
Yeah. Okay, Sandra, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, regarding file A35, 2021P, 260 Welland Road in Pelham, the application made for minor variance of the max accessory lot coverage of 1.4%, max building height of 7.3 meters be granted for the following reasons. That the variance is minor in nature as the impact on the adjacent properties is minimal, the intent of the zoning bylaws maintained, the intent of the official plan is maintained, and the proposal is desirable for the land. As it reuses the existing building footprint, it maintains the rural character, allows for enhanced storage and use, and no objections were received from commenting agencies or abutting property owners. The application is granted without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham. The Committee of Adjustment considered the written and oral comments and agrees with the minor variance report analysis and recommendation that this application meets the Planning Act test for minor variance. Conditions: building permits, and that prior to the building permit, to submit a stage 1 archaeological assessment to the Niagara region for approval, and apply for and receive a work permit, including an erosion and sediment control plan, and establishment of a naturalized buffer through the NPCA for approval.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I second that motion.
Thank you. Then I'll put it to the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. As I see, carried. We can, congratulations, you have your minor variance. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We can now proceed on with the next file.
And we are allowed to leave the.
Yeah.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, the next application on tonight's agenda is A36, 368 Canboro Road. And I would just ask Ms. Miller to please bring in our agents and our applicants. I would advise the committee that the agent, Craig Rowe, will be representing this file as opposed to William, but he is here with us tonight.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, and Ms. Miller, you may share your screen. Application for minor variance, file A36/2021P, 368 Canboro Road. The subject land is located on the south side of Canboro Road, lying west of Effingham Street, known locally as 368 Canboro Road in the town of Pelham. The minor variance application requests relief from section 6.16D IV, ingress and egress, minimum distance between driveways, to permit 3.5 meters from the western property line and 1.5 meters from the eastern property line, whereas the bylaw requires 7.5 meters. Section 7.4C, maximum lot coverage, to permit 15%, whereas the bylaw allows 10%. Section 7.4D, minimum front yard, to permit 11 meters, whereas 13 meters is required. And Section 7.4F, minimum side yard, to permit a side yard of 1.2 meters, whereas 9 meters is required. To date, the following comments have been received. The building department, a permit is required for the proposed two-story dwelling. Building code compliance will be a requirement. Retaining wall greater than 1 meter require a building permit. Public Works Department, see conditions. Niagara Region, Original comments received on September 21st, unsupportive of the application and have concerns that whether the existing site condition can support a new septic system, requested a detailed septic design by an approved septic contractor/designer to be submitted to the department, meeting Ontario Building Code requirements to confirm if the proposed development can be serviced on the restrictive lot. We did receive revised comments from the Niagara region on September 24th, noting that the region's position remains unchanged, that a new septic system must be required, and due to the access, the septic system will need to be built first before the new home. The septic design and permit application is now requested as a condition of approval. We did receive one public comment, and that is summarized as follows. Object to the lot coverage and side yard setback variances. Concerned that the proposed dwelling may not fit with the existing rural residential neighborhood, built form and character. Main concern being the reduced side yard setback, which may disrupt the existing mature trees, which are currently on the west property line and on the subject and adjacent lands. Another concern raised is that the limited access to the backyard, which may lead to repeated requests to use adjacent access. Is the variance minor in nature? With regard to lot coverage to 15%, staff is of the opinion that although the lot coverage allowed will be exceeded, the impact on the subject property and adjacent properties is minimal. The variance is minor overall as the subject lot has an overall area of 2172.75 meters squared, with a proposed building area of 242 meters squared, which equates to an overall lot coverage of 11.14%. Additional lot coverage was requested to accommodate for any future accessory building. Adequate land area will remain available to handle stormwater runoff and preserve rear yard amenity area and follow for the construction of a new septic system. With regard to reduced front yard, the proposed reduced front yard variance is minor overall as there will still be adequate space that separates the main building face from the public street. The proposed building is also set back further than the existing and is generally in line with adjacent properties. With regard to reduced side yard, the requested setback is indented for rural residential purposes, which are characterized by significantly larger agricultural lots with an established frontage and would comfortably allow for the implementation of a required setback. With regard to reduced distance between driveways, the proposed driveway is generally located in the same area as the existing and will be located more centrally within the site. The intent of the required distance is to ensure safe vehicular movement. A reduction in the distance is acceptable and no issues were identified with respect to sightline concerns, site accessibility, and vehicle maneuverability. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? The increase of the building lot coverage is desirable as the overall lot coverage is not significantly increased, and the proposed dwelling is an average-sized dwelling, while the lot is considered an undersized lot and is an existing lot of record. The side yard setback variance is considered desirable as the proposed dwelling has approximately the same side yard setback to the west as the existing, and the existing mature trees situated on the west property line can provide for visual screening for the proposed dwelling and adjacent properties. The reduced driveway minimum distance variance is considered desirable as it will be relocated to a more central location within the site and would in turn improve vehicular accessibility. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? The proposed single detached dwelling is a permitted use in the specialty agricultural designation of the OP, and uses which are compatible with agriculture are permitted. The requested variances should have no impact on the agricultural viability of the subject lands or the agricultural use of the surrounding area and will not compromise the objectives of the OP with respect to land use compatibility, stormwater runoff, and private sewage system servicing capabilities. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? The variances maintain the general intent of the zoning bylaw as the subject site is located in an area which can be characterized as a rural village, and smaller narrow lots similar to the subject site exist quite commonly in the surrounding neighborhood. The requested variances will allow for a slightly larger rural residential dwelling without creating a building that is completely out of character in the surrounding neighborhood. Subject to the conditions, staff is of the opinion that the proposed variances will not have a negative impact on the subject property nor any neighboring properties. The proposal makes efficient use of the land. In planning staff's opinion, the application is consistent with the PPS and conforms to the provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommend that application number 836/2021P be approved subject to the following conditions. That the applicant apply for and submit a new septic permit application along with a detailed septic design by an approved septic contractor/designer to the Niagara region for review and approval. The plan must demonstrate that the proposed development can be serviced by a new septic system on the restrictive lot to the satisfaction of the Niagara region. No construction shall commence prior to the clearance of this condition and upon a new septic system in place which can ensure full functionality. That the applicant conduct a Stage 1/2 archaeological assessment and receive clearance from the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture. That the applicant undertake a tree savings plan identifying trees to be retained and remain undisrupted. That the applicant provide front and side dwelling elevation plans and perspective view drawings that positively contribute to the surrounding neighborhood and demonstrate compatibility and harmonious transition with the existing streetscape with respect to height, massing, and design continuity through the use of a front porch window symmetrically proportionate to the building's mass and congruent use of exterior cladding, reduced garage dominance, etc. Said elevation plans shall be substantially unaltered from those at the time of the building permit. That the applicant submit a comprehensive overall lot grading plan to demonstrate that drainage does not negatively impact nor rely on neighboring properties. That the applicant obtain a driveway access and culvert permit from the town for the construction of a new driveway or any modifications to existing driveways or entrances. Installation and or modification of the new entrances shall be completed in accordance with town standards prior to building permit, and the applicant shall bear all costs associated with these works. That the applicant apply for and receive a building permit for the proposed dwelling and retaining walls prior to construction. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the Secretary Treasurer in writing as soon as possible. Holly Wilford, Secretary Treasurer to the Committee of Adjustment, 20 Pelham Town Square, P.O. Box 400, Fawn Hill, Ontario, LOS 1EO, hwilford@pelham.ca. This contact information can also be found on the Town of Pelham's website.
Thank you. We bring in the, there's consultants here, Greg. Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Okay, have you any other comments to add? I'm looking at this. You're going to build, the existing building has to be taken down and then a new one put up, correct?
That's correct, and it was my intention. Also with me is Ethan Lamont, our junior planner, who's had carriage over most of the file. And as the clerk noted, I'm pinch hitting for Welland today, but up to speed on everything. Really, the intent of the application is that our clients, James and Tammy Vanderbrink, they've had this home for a little while. They've been using it as a rental property, but they've now decided that they'd like to move to Pelham full time. They have a growing family with 4 kids, and the current configuration of that existing home, as well as its current physical state and integrity, is not what's required, in their opinion, to settle in and meet their daily needs. So the proposal for the minor variances before the committee tonight is to set up some general parameters that are going to allow them to develop a home that's compatible and meets their needs, but also respectful of the requirements, especially along the Canboro Road corridor. So with regards to the front yard setback, we've undertaken a small reduction in the front yard. We could have easily had the building a little bit further back, but at the direction of town staff, there's an interest, of course, along Canboro Road, ensuring that the building is positioned closer to the road, in line with existing dwellings. So we were happy to entertain that variance and feel that's minor and certainly reasonable. In terms of the side yard setbacks, for the proposed building envelope, we're actually coming into closer conformity with the requirements of the zoning bylaw. I think on the west side, we might be 0.8 meters away, or sorry, on the east side, 0.8 meters away. So this relief is consistent with Ontario Building Code, but still provides enough flexibility for them to have a good development envelope. As you've seen the conditions about tree savings plans, elevation plans, which are all to the satisfaction of town staff. So there may be a little bit of massaging of the building footprint. So we feel that provides enough flexibility on that. In terms of the lot coverage, obviously with development volumes right now, we want to be respectful of this committee's time, of staff's time as well, and feel that going for an increase in lot coverage is appropriate on the property. It would allow them to construct an accessory structure in the future if they wanted, like a larger shed or something of that nature. And that prevents us from then having to come back to the committee again and going through the motion again. So we think it's appropriate to ask at this time because we're before you. And then finally, with regards to the location of the driveway, we have a 12-meter wide lot. Not a lot of flexibility there in terms of where we can put a driveway. So we feel the variances requested allow for a safe and appropriate location for that driveway, maintaining that existing character. So we've read the report. We have no objections to the staff analysis. We have no objections to the conditions. The only thing we would note for the benefit of the committee, and perhaps staff can confirm on this, condition number 2 about the stage 1 and 2 archaeological assessment, that has actually been submitted as part of our application. We've obtained the ministry clearance. So if it needs to stay in there again, no problem, we'll provide it again. But just for a point of clarity, that has been dealt with. So certainly happy to answer any questions that you may have tonight. And our clients are watching. That's James on the camera right now.
I have one. The neighbor there, I heard very clearly. I mean, how is you build a house? How are you going to get to the backyard to do anything unless you ask your neighbor for a favor to be able to go over their land to get to the backyard? I think the neighbor has a very valid point to make there. Have you made any provisions to be able to get back to the backyard there if you have any work to be done? Obviously, to put your sewer system, you're going to have to do that before you do anything else.
Certainly, thanks for the question, Mr. Chair. As I noted, we need to do a little bit of massaging with the building footprint here. We've taken a preliminary look at the trees, for example, and understand there are some setbacks that need to be maintained. So we may actually have a little bit more wiggle room from those side yards. We just wanted to set up those minimums to help facilitate the building design and working with what we felt was a compatible envelope. It's certainly something that we will be taking a look at. I think it's a very valid point from the neighbors. And I think that it's manageable either by way of augmenting the building to provide a clear path of travel, or perhaps just using the garage and a larger side door to come through and say move a lawnmower or something through like that. I think it's certainly manageable, and the fact that the town staff has the approval authority on the front and side elevations of the dwelling are going to provide that necessary check for us when we go for the final clearance of our conditions and then moving on to a building permit.
Well, I would like to see a condition that you address during construction that you do not have to go to your neighbors and ask them permission to go on their yard to proceed to the backyard. I would like to see you do your construction and not have to rely on anyone else to do anything in the backyard. Are you able to do that?
Through Mr. Chair, I think we can certainly discuss that with staff. I'm just planning wise, I'm not sure how we could satisfy that condition if we did need to have some incidental trespass to just move something around. I'm not sure that we can guarantee that that would not be required, but certainly it's something I think that if the committee is comfortable with, we demonstrate that to the satisfaction of town staff, that there will be no or absolute minimal impacts during construction or any trespass required. As I said, we have to work with the detailed house plans, and if we do end up with that augmentation, perhaps it's a non-issue.
Well, for example, you get 0.8 setback, you want to put siding or anything on the house. You want to stay there, you're going 2 stories. Yeah. Either you want to use a high reach machine or something. How are you going to run it there, and how are you going to do the work without asking your neighbor to go on their property?
To you, Mr. Chair, I would point out that our minimum side yard we're asking for is 1.2 meters on each side, which would be effectively 4 feet. The 0.8 is the current deficiency. So we would have more room than the current home does to maneuver around that building.
Okay. Sandra or Brenda, have you any questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sandra.
a point that Mr. Rowe had made. Was it actually town staff that had suggested that the new building be closer to the lot line? And the reason I'm asking this question is that I noticed that there is another newer home being built on Canboro Road further west, closer to the old town hall. That's actually the home that was demolished was closer to the road. Now this new home is built way past where there's a barn on the property. Are you familiar with that property? Like, I'm just wondering, like, was it the town that suggested that the building be closer to the front? Because it seems that that wasn't the case for the other building. Now there could be different circumstances, but the other building's being built quite further away from the road.
Thanks for the question. Through Mr. Chair, it's my understanding in discussions with William and the client on this is there's specific official plan policies in the town of Pelham that speak about that Canboro Road corridor, and the character of it is very important. And one of the matters to ensure that the built form in that character is maintained is to provide the buildings closer to the street or functionally interfacing with that. It's a comment that was provided to us through pre-consultation and entertained by our client. Certainly they would be happy if it was set further back. They wouldn't have any objection to that. But at the direction of staff, which I think from a planning perspective makes good sense from urban design, we've accommodated that request and put it forward. But certainly if the variance wasn't to be granted by the committee this evening, it wouldn't break the development at all. We felt it was the appropriate thing to do and being consistent with the desires of staff and the official plan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rowe. Perhaps the building that I'm referring to is not as close to the center of what's known as Ridgeville, maybe the town, and there's a little bit more space there. Perhaps that's why that one is set further back, but thank you for your clarification on that.
Brenda, have you any questions?
I have no questions.
Okay. Craig, I have another. I'm looking how you put in these retaining walls, Matt. You can have these elevations. You're really going to have a problem putting something together that you have access to the rear of the property. I'm really concerned. I can understand why the neighbors concerned. I'm looking at your drawings and I'm saying, wow. With the building, but I gather the town, the way you're saying it, they've approved your plans. Is that correct then?
To your question, Mr. Chair, the intent of the variance is that the minimum side yards for these properties is 9 meters. And as I said, we only have 12 meters of frontage. That doesn't leave a lot of room in terms of having an appropriately wide garage and an entrance to the home. So what we've done is we come in at 1.2 meters, which is kind of the standard for side yard setbacks. And as I said, these have been set out as our absolute minimum. They're closer in conformity than the existing structure, but we feel that they provide enough flexibility for us to go through our detailed design. So in staff's report, they have no objection to the variance in principle, but they provided those checks in that require us to submit those elevations, make sure everything's in character. We also have the requirement for a detailed grading plan where perhaps we can solve some of the issues related to the grading of the site and the retaining walls. As noted, some of the trees that we're evaluating are on adjacent properties, so we need to be mindful of those, provide the necessary setbacks and protection. So these are all things from our perspective that the town really is in full control of, and as everything's to their satisfaction, they're the ultimate sign-off authority. And I think having them sit in today and they're hearing your direction, Mr. Chair, and the direction of the committee, I think that they'll be paying close attention to that, and they won't be letting us proceed to a building permit until those issues are satisfied. And I think that it's certainly fair to allow our client's application to proceed into that process and then have those necessary works taken care of. Because right now, as I said, we're just trying to set up the envelope for our development in a manner that's safe and appropriate for the property.
Okay, thank you. I think you understand that there are neighbors and they have a right to make comment, and we as a committee have to look at what they have to say. And I heard in the letter that one person has a very, very strong argument. So I will assume that I'm not going to get into the construction end or anything, that the neighbor, I'd like to know we've considered what you've said, and I will assume that the city will make sure you're looked after in this application. I have no other questions. Sarah, has there been any emails that have come through?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we actually have a pre-registered member of the public wishing to speak to this application, and saying that I would invite Ms. Miller to please bring Ms. Manson into the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I overlooked that there.
That's okay, Ms. Manson. You're welcome to turn on your... Perfect. Ms. Manson, you may proceed with your comments.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi. Actually, my name is Nigel Woodavine. Caitlin Manson is my girlfriend.
Okay.
We live in 366 together.
Okay.
Is that better? Can you see me now?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay. Our concern is with that minimum side yard. With them reducing it to, what was it going to be? 1.2 meters. That puts them like really, really close to our house. Craig mentioned that it's actually closer to conformity than it is now, but I can't see how that's true because like the house is much farther than 4 feet from our property line now than it's going to be. So our concern is how close they're going to be to some of our windows, like this window behind me. If they're 1.2 meters from our house, I'm almost going to be able to reach out and touch it through this window. So that's a little close for us. I understand it's a tricky lot to work with, but if the house was actually a little bit farther back, like a few meters farther back from the road, then it wouldn't be beside any windows or anything. So we'd be more okay with that. But just how close they'd be is our concern.
Well, I'd ask, why don't we ask Craig the question? What would be involved in moving the house a little further back to accommodate your concerns? Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the comment, Nigel. As I noted, we've requested the placement of that house based on our consultation with town staff, and our client has indicated that they would be comfortable if it was set back a little bit further. So by this committee granting the variance to bring the house closer, that just becomes our minimum setback. And I think as we go through this design exercise and produce those detailed elevations and perhaps are able to provide the neighbor with a little bit of a better understanding of what things are going to look like in the placement of windows and things like that, then perhaps we can, through the submission of our detailed plans for the review of town staff, maybe we're able to deal with those concerns by maybe being able to slide the house back a little bit further. Yeah, I can certainly appreciate the comments, but it does come down to the fact that it's a very tight lot, and we don't really have a lot of room to work with. And if the tree preservation plan, for example, on the west side comes back with a significant buffer for protection, it's going to continue to reduce this footprint and the functionality of it. So I think that the necessary conditions of the minor variance provide enough direction to our client to work to evaluate those concerns. But by the committee, what I would say to you, Mr. Chair, is if you do grant the variance for the 11-meter setback, certainly we can take Nigel's comments into consideration, and if possible, perhaps slide that house a little bit back further. And I know that town planning staff's listening to this comment as well, and certainly factor that into their review.
Thank you. I mean, I hear Mr. Manson, his concern, and I'm just listening here, Sarah. I'd like to somehow make sure that his concern is addressed. Do we make it a condition, or do we just proceed as is and make the town aware of it, and at the time of building permit and reviewing the character of the building, the construction and that, will they take Mr. Manson and his significant other there into consideration and make sure that they're happy and that the owner of the property is happy, that we can have a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have Nigel's comments on records, and of course, as you mentioned, staff is present in this meeting, so yes, all concerns will be addressed at that stage. As you note, the conditions do require detailed plans to be submitted, so absolutely these comments will be passed along to the appropriate staff members. And Ms. Wilford, if you have anything to add.
Thank you, Ms. Leach. Through you, Mr. Chair, I do agree with what Ms. Leach has said. Town staff are here and they are listening, and so are the applicant and their agent. And they are listening and hopefully will be able to make some design changes. However, I would just note to the committee that if you do approve the variance that's requested, which I believe is a request of a minimum front yard of 11 meters and to permit a minimum side yard of 1.2 meters, as Mr. Craig Rowe indicated, those are the minimums. So granting the variance would allow them to be able to build within those minimums. There's no guarantee that they would have to push the house back. You would be granting the variance as requested. I don't know if you do wish to speak to planning. We do have planning staff here as well. The committee's options, of course, are to grant as requested, or the committee can always revise the request from the applicant to make it a little bit closer to the zoning bylaw. However, there may be risk to the development. As Mr. Craig Rowe has indicated, that there may be some trees or some landscaping issues. So you may want to receive some planning advice from Mr. Ng.
Okay, I'll ask Mr. Ng if he could address this concern for the neighbor. I think we want to, obviously, we want to see the developer in it, but we have to make people that are in the area have to listen to their concerns and make sure that they're not negatively impacted. So if Mr. Ng is there, could he please ask how do we address to make sure that we can make the neighbor there happy, at least satisfied with how we're handling this.
Hear you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
So yes, one of the conditions that we have requested is to submit front and side dwelling elevation plans and also perspective view drawings. And those should be sufficient to address any design continuity or obviously, as stated by the neighbors, the side setback can be concerning in regards to how close the distance is. So those will be addressed while we clear the condition for which we have requested. So those will be dealt with at that stage.
Now, would you at all consult with the neighbor before you make your final condition, just to make sure he's aware of what's going on? I don't think I wouldn't want to put that he'd had to make the final approval, but give him the courtesy of just showing him what's going on. Maybe he might have a comment or two. Can we do that for him?
Just, yeah, I think neighbors' concern is definitely very valid, and it will definitely be considered while we review prior to clearance of that condition. And perhaps we can make some adjustment to what's originally submitted and maybe move it further back as to obviously the originally asked front yard setback is to keep the proposed dwelling to be generally in line with the neighboring properties. And if that can be maintained to respect the side yard setback, it can be moved back to address those concerns.
Okay, fine. I appreciate what you've said. Okay, Holly, I think from my end, we have it on record. We've all been taped. The neighbor has been given assurances, and they've been addressed here. I think I don't want to belabor the point any longer. I think hopefully we've addressed the concerns and we can proceed and ask for a motion to accept. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just ask Ms. Leach if there's any other pre-registered members of the public or if there's been any emails prior to closing the public portion of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. We do not have any further pre-registered members of the public. However, I will just confirm that we've received no emails.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll close the public portion of the meeting.
Yes, it is 4:54, and I confirm we have not received any emails.
So I will then ask for a motion for this proposal. Do I have a motion from either Brenda or Sandra? Where's Brenda? I don't see her here.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, go ahead, Brenda.
Okay, application file A36 2021P 368 Canboro Road in Pelham. Application is made for minor variances to permit a maximum lot coverage of 15%, a maximum front yard of 11 meters, a minimum side yard of 1.2 meters, minimum distance between the driveways of 3.5 meters from the westerly property line and 1.5 meters from the easterly property line. The application is granted. The reasons are the variances are minor in nature as the impact on adjacent properties is minimal. There's adequate distance separation from the building face from the public street. There are no drainage issues. The driveway will be more centrally located. The intent of the zoning bylaw is maintained. The intent of the official plan is maintained. The proposal is desirable for the land as lot coverage is not a significant increase. It is in keeping with the frontage of the adjacent properties. The proposed dwelling has approximately the same side yard setback to the west. The driveway will be more centrally located. This application is granted without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham. The Committee of Adjustment considered the written and oral comments and agrees with the minor variance report analysis and recommendations that this application meets the Planning Act test for minor variances. The conditions are building permits for the dwelling and the retaining walls. Prior to building permit, provide a front and side elevation plans, undertake a tree savings plan, conduct a stage 1 and 2 archaeological assessment, obtain a driveway and entrance permit, submit a lot grading and drainage plan, submit a new septic permit application.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. And we'll put it to a vote. All in favor of granting the motion as requested, raise your hand. Granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have a good evening, all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee.
You're welcome. Okay, as you bring in the next one, file, Sarah.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. The next application.
I'm just going to mute.
Your next application to be heard this evening concurrently are files B29/2021P and B30/2021P, 1239 Pelham Street. I would ask Ms. Miller to please bring in our agent and our applicants. And share her screen when she's ready. Applications for consent, B29/2021P, B30/2021P, 1239 Pelham Street. The subject parcels being Part 3, frontage of 21.34 meters, and Part 2, frontage of 20 meters on the east side of Pelham Street lying south of Merritt Road, known locally as 1239 Pelham Street. Application is made for partial discharge of mortgage and consent to convey 1,235.2 square meters, Part 3, and 1,157.6 square meters, Part 2, for future construction of a single detached dwelling. Part 1 is to be retained for continued residential use of 1239 Pelham Street. To date, the following comments have been received. Hydro 1, no comments or concerns. The Building Department, no comments. Public Works Department, town staff have reviewed and submitted documentation offering the following conditions to be shown on the last slide. We did receive one public comment, and it is summarized as follows. Drainage concerns pertaining to the swale/culvert located between Part 3 and Part 2, not able to handle flooding and may instead flows towards own backyard. Concern that own sump pumps cannot handle additional stormwater from planned dwellings. Planning staff is of the opinion that the proposals apply current planning and development goals dealing with appropriate infill development, specifically making more efficient use of the town's finite urban land supply and municipal infrastructure where suitable to do so. In planning staff's opinion, the application is consistent with the PPS and conforms to provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommend that application number B29/2021P and B30/2021P be approved, subject to the following conditions. That the applicant submit a Stage 1/2 archaeological assessment to the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture Industries for review and approval. The report must be accepted by the Ministry to the satisfaction of the Director of Community Planning and Development prior to clearance of this condition. That the applicant submit a comprehensive overall lot grading and drainage plan for all parcels to demonstrate that the drainage does not negatively impact nor rely on the neighboring properties. That the applicant confirm that no existing utilities cross the proposed new property lines. Should any services cross the new property lines, the applicant shall be responsible for costs associated with their relocation and/or removal. That the applicant obtain a driveway entrance and culvert permit for the construction of all new or modifications of existing driveways or entrances. Installation of entrances shall be in accordance with town standards prior to consent, and the applicant shall bear all costs associated with these works. That the applicant sign the Town of Pelham Standard Memorandum of Understanding explaining that development charges and cash in lieu of dedication of land for park purposes are required prior to the issuance of a building permit. Provide the Secretary Treasurer with a registrable legal description of the subject parcel, together with a copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for use in the issuance of the certificate of consent. Provide the final certification fee of $399 payable to the Treasurer, Town of Pelham, be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer. All costs associated with fulfilling conditions of consent shall be borne by the applicant. That the applicant receive final certification of consent files B29/2021P and B30/2021P from the Secretary Treasurer concurrently. If you wish to receive a copy of the Notice of Decision, please contact the Secretary Treasurer in writing as soon as possible. Holly Wilford, Secretary Treasurer to the Committee of Adjustment, 20 Pelham Town Square, P.O. Box 400, Fonthill, Ontario, LOS 1EO. hwilford@pelham.ca. This contact information can also be found on the Town of Pelham's website. Through you, Mr. Chair, I do see that our agent and applicant are in the meeting with us. Oh, Mr. Chair, it appears that you are muted.
Thank you. Okay. I'm just looking at the situation here. Have either Sandra or Brenda any questions?
I have no questions, through the chair.
Brenda?
I have no questions. Thank you.
No, it's fairly straightforward. The conditions, I see the conditions with the address the concerns of the neighbors with flooding, and that I'm sure there'll be a good plan to move the water in that. As if we have no, do we have anybody addressing? I thought, is there somebody?
Yes, there is. Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, we do have one registered member of the public. However, I would allow the agent to make some preliminary comments. I believe he had his hand up.
Okay, go ahead there. I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
No problem.
Go ahead, Mr. Ahmed.
How are you guys doing? I'm representing the owner, Mark and Wendy Wixton, on this property, and it's a simple application. Basically, they have a large lot and they're looking to sever off 2 parcels on it. We have submitted drainage and grading plan, and as of earlier this week, the ministry has accepted an archaeological stage 1-2 report. So we're working through the conditions, but I'm here to answer any other questions or address any comments you guys have.
Okay, you say you've already done a plan of for the topography to address the drainage situation?
Correct. A preliminary grading plan was submitted. It was based on maximum building footprints for the 2 proposed lots. That will be refined once there's a more specific building footprint, and that gets all submitted and reviewed as part of the building permit application with the town.
Okay, thank you. That's very important. Okay. Have you anything else to add?
Nope, just here for any other questions.
I'm sorry for the oversight. I apologize. Okay, Sarah, we can then bring the person that would like to address this matter.
Yes, thank you. I would kindly ask Ms. Miller to please bring our participant into the meeting. And you are welcome to proceed with your comments.
Yes, please proceed with your comments.
My name is Cindy Pfeffer. My family lives behind the property, kind of at the pretty far end of it. We face Brookfield Court, so we're at the sort of the very far end of the property. So near the vacant part that eventually will be houses. I actually wanted to speak in favor of the application, actually. So for a couple of reasons. One, it's a hell of a lot better than Tim Hortons drive-through, which I was worried was going to end up in there. So I'm happy about that. And 2, our house is a 2-story house, and we get it's strange amount of road noise that we hear on the 2nd level of our house, which I suspect is because it's that gap. It's the only spot where there are no houses. So I'm hopeful that the development of those houses will actually reduce the street noise in our house. So I just wanted to say that I'm in support of the application.
Oh, Mr. Chair, you appear to be muted.
Okay, thank you. Makes for us the decision a lot easier hearing there's some support for this. We appreciate your comments. If there's no other comment, nobody else has any questions, then I would ask, are there any emails? Have anything come through?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have no further pre-registered members of the public. However, we have, in fact, received an email on this application. I will just read it into the record right now. This is from Mr. Kilpatrick. There is a serious problem in the area with groundwater flooding the basements of property owners in the area of the properties in question at the hearing. The residents in the area have and continue to spend large sums of money for reworked foundation drainage, interior foundation drains, and ongoing sump pump operation. 30 or so years ago, the town installed a catch basin just behind the lots identified as parts 1 and 2 on the plan in question. The basin is connected to a storm sewer on Brookfield Court. Presumably, this basin was to provide relief for the groundwater problems in the area, but there is no evidence that it is in any way connected to accomplish this. Because a solution to the groundwater flooding problems in the area might involve some use of the properties under consideration at this meeting, it is requested that before proceeding to permit the development of the properties, the town prepare a comprehensive plan to solve the groundwater flooding in the area. Thank you for considering this. And through you, Mr. Chair, I can confirm that that is the only email we have received on this application.
Okay, before we go in, I'd ask Mr. Ahmed if he had any comment or wants to add in or deal with this right now before we close the public portion of the meeting.
Sure. Just in my brief experience working on this file on this property, I haven't, in discussion with the owner, I haven't heard of any foundation or drainage issues that they have been experiencing on their property. But as we previously indicated, a grading drainage plan will be provided, and it will be submitted for review along with the foundation drawings as part of the building permit application for the town's review and approval. And I think that's a good way for that check to be mitigated to ensure that what is proposed is being constructed appropriately and will not impact the neighbors.
I accept. I think the other thing I would like to add that they shouldn't use this venue to fix a problem that's been there for years. If that problem's there, it is not part of, at least I don't think it's part of your problem. You're going to address the problem you're going to deal with when you want to build in that. So you're putting a drainage plan in that. Has the town said that your plan should deal with the existing problem or not? Have you been, when you're dealing with the town, have they asked you to deal with the problem when you were doing your design?
No, this is the first we're hearing of this problem related to the rear lot catch basin. And like I said, the drainage and grading plans prepared were based on preliminary building footprints. Once there's a more definite building footprint, a more definite grading plan will be submitted for the town's review.
Okay, so you'll be addressing the water on the properties that you're going to sever. They are, you only have to deal with the water that's being coming on those properties with no other properties. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do believe that Mr. Young would like to comment.
Sure. Go ahead, Mr. Young.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to point out that Mr. Ahmed and I have had discussions regarding the stormwater drainage in the area. He did come to me early on regarding, the severances that were going to be put forward. There is a drainage plan for the Brookfield-Steffler area that does indicate that the stormwater runoff from the proposed lots does drain to the catch basin and does drain through to Steffler. So Mr. Ahmed is actually following what was previously designed.
Fine, and I'm sure that the design is based on good engineering principles, so I don't think the people that have commented have to worry about the people that are addressing the situation. Am I correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the issue I think that is being mentioned is mainly due to in the original design, there was a 3-meter swale that ran down the back of those lots that back onto this open land. And if you have a look on Navigator, with the exclusion of one, the other ones have the rear yards covered in concrete for pools. So therefore, the drainage swale that was there to alleviate the flooding issue is now kind of disappeared.
You make an interesting remark. I mean, if people do, neighborhoods do change their yard and create problems of drainage, I gather there is no requirement to come to the town for permission to do this?
No, there is not. Unless there's an actual registered easement over the properties for the drainage swale. The town has no say on what people put in their back gardens. However, people have to understand that if you change, a solid back garden to a hardscape back garden, there is additional runoff, which does add to the drainage problem.
Okay, and so we are happy then with the work Mr. Ahmed has done for his clients with regard to the drainage so far.
Through you, Mr. Chair, as I stated before, he has been working with me. He did come to me early on to get the drainage plan and the drainage area. So, he is working in accordance with the original design.
Okay, thank you. I'm very happy that you brought this to our attention. Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would just ask for clarity that we formally close the public portion of the meeting. I can confirm again that we have not received any further emails.
And I'd like to close the public portion of the meeting.
Thank you.
And that I ask now for a motion to either accept the matter at hand. Do I have okay, go ahead, Sandra. Thank you.
I'll make a motion that file B29 and B30 2021 P 1239 Pelham Street in Pelham, that the applications for consent for the partial discharge of mortgage and to convey parts 3 and part 2 is granted for the following, with the following conditions. To the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works, to submit a lot grading and drainage plan, to confirm that no utilities cross the property lines, obtain a driveway entrance and culvert permit to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning, to sign the town's standard MOU, conduct a stage 1-2 archaeological assessment to the satisfaction of the Secretary Treasurer, that applications B29 2021P and B30 2021P receive final certification concurrently, and to provide the Secretary Treasurer with a registerable legal description, copy of the deposited reference plan, and that the final certification fee of $399 be provided. This decision is based on the following reasons: that the application conforms to and complies with the town official plan, regional policy plan, provincial policy statement, and the town zoning bylaw. That this decision is rendered having regards to section 5124 and 5125 of the Planning Act, and that the committee considered all written and oral submissions and finds that, subject to the conditions, this application meets Planning Act criteria, is consistent, and complies with provincial, regional, and town planning policy.
Oh, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I second the motion.
Thank you. I will put it to vote. All in favor of granting the consent, raise your hand. Carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed and Mr. Wilkston. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. And we do have the minutes from the September 8th Committee of Adjustment hearing, where all members this evening were present.
Yes. I went through it. I didn't see any problems. Do Brenda or Sandra have any, were there any omissions or any problems with the minutes? Sandra? No?
Not that I'm aware. I didn't see any.
No, Brenda? No. We're okay then. So I asked that we move to accept. All in favor? Okay, carried. We accept the minutes as written there. Sarah, thank you.
Thank you. And then that does bring us to adjournment.
Who would like to make the motion? Okay, Sandra.
I'll make the motion for adjournment.
Seconded by Brenda.
Seconded by Brenda.
Thank you very much.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. Carried.
Thank you.
Now we can talk about Florida.
I just please be reminded our live streaming recording is still working. I will proceed to